Cortus, why are we up here? You haven't met an alien ambassador in person for decades now. Even if they're a new species, it's not something our own ambassadors can't handle, and frankly you're not exactly the best conversationalist to make first impressions.
This first contact is slightly unique. The incoming ambassador has been sent to us by Tazat by the request of an unknown nation or species. What's more, they specifically wanted this meeting to occur in person and not over long-range communication, which is unusual. I also felt that because of their apparent association with the Confederacy and the current intergalactic situation between us, that this meeting is best done by someone of a higher standing than a simple savant diplomat. Plus, Loomis won't be able to watch us inside many embassy interiors, as many mics and cameras were removed for ambassador privacy.
Or maybe you just like the sunlight in pretty white buildings. Though I think they could look better, honestly. They really need to look different to the ones you find in the cities.
How so?
Less white. There's so much white. Everything is always white, and it's so not fashionable being so monocoloured. You need buildings built from something like stone, brick and marble with a lively colour range. This is Veluteria, Cortus. The place used to have thousands of fancy-looking buildings and palaces. If you could just recapture a bit of that style in some buildings, then this place would look so much better. Take this place, for example. Add some marble statues and a big fancy regal building, some carpets, some curtains, stained windows and mahogany furnishings, and it'd be so much more impressive for any alien ambassadors. Flashy lights and holograms are cool, but aliens have those too these days.
I think someone here sounds a little bit biased. If your room is any example to go by, it sounds like you want us to literally build palaces and manors stuffed with butlers and surrounded by colourful gardens.
Cairo, that is exactly what she wants.
I can feel Charlie rolling his eyes from here. I suppose she'd also want us to build her a house like that for her too? Cynthia, don't answer that.
Cortus, I want a house like the one just described. Technically, I'm homeless. A room in a workplace in an underground bunker doesn't count. I could even work from there. I do most of my work on computers anyway, and any weapon testing we do on the surface anyway. Cortus, house, want, now.
Me and my mouth. Okay, serious business time. Cynthia, try not to freak any aliens out with crazy talk. And Cortus, try not to say anything. Holy shit, they're space cats.
Ljubav, vera I razumevanje vama, deco ljudskog roda.
Human dialect detected. What a surprise. Translating. Greetings, unregistered alien life form. I understand you are a representative of a currently unrecognized state or nation. For the purpose of this meeting, I represent our administration.
That's being the administration, or Cortus administration.
I bid you well, leader of the administration. My name is Lava Dubnov, the Striped Commonwealth's ambassador to the Tazat. Your name... Pardon. Designation is Cortus, correct?
In part. Cortus is not an acronym or abbreviation. It is simply a name. And the administration is not led. It is directed. And I am the Prime Director.
Pardon. I merely use that term due to you being, as I've understood it, a biosynthetic automaton. I thought it sounded more appropriate in this instance. Even so, my government decided they wanted to open communications with your people. Hence, why I'm here.
Long-range communication is possible without the formalities of personal contact. The Tazat could have simply opened channels for you.
What he means to say is he thinks your chosen method of contact was... illogical.
I can understand your point of view, but try to understand mine. My people believe in a show of trust and intimacy. Coming here, like this, no protection, no backup, no way of escape. If your intentions are hostile, I'm pretty much done for. Trust is a decision, and I have decided to give you the opportunity to earn it.
It would be highly illogical and damaging to murder envoys of other nations. Many with hostile intent understand this. Diplomats operate on this grounding of logic, otherwise there would be no diplomats. Logically, we only stand to maintain our reputation, not to enhance it. I know nothing of your Commonwealth, but they would not have sent you if they had thought death would be your ultimate fate with us.
My people are not idiots. We knew that you would not hurt me. I'm just saying that you are in such a position that you can... Okay, maybe we can discuss another matter then.
That'd probably be best. We'll be standing here all day otherwise.
In that case, maybe we should go somewhere more accommodating. And if it is no problem to ask, may I request food? Preferably meat. I'm eating for 3 at the moment and I am positively famished right now.
Of course. We will require a swab and biochemistry scan to ensure our food is compatible with your biochemistry. On Belitaria, food is tailored mostly for human biochemistry. This embassy has dining quarters within. It shall serve your requirements.
I have full confidence that you will do so. And so, after overthrowing the criminal cabal that had our whole people under control, the Protectors began a series of drastic reformations that would create a society where all Tigreran, and now other people, can live free, embracing the ideals of fairness and welfare, as our Blessed Mother Grimizda intended. That's how the nation now known as the Striped Commonwealth began.
Intriguing. Our embassies would like to record this and the expanded version of events for historic record. It seems every decade more aliens spring up. This bubble galaxy is getting smaller every day. I wonder how long such a nation as yours will endure the inevitable tensions that will arise in such claustrophobic conditions. Please do not misunderstand me, but we have a much greater history of knowledge. What remains of it, that is. And such idyllic nations typically failed to withstand the test of time.
We have learned a lot of things of your creators as well, the good and the bad, but that is no excuse to be cruel to others. Ends justify the means, and the greater good are all excuses used to commit terrible things. There must be a better way. In a way you might understand. Think of people as a resource. If that resource is properly cultivated, it will yield more results, correct?
In that line of thought, you are correct. But people yield poor returns on their investments. They are unreliable and prone to a change of heart and mind. And when it comes to it, no sacrifice is too great for success, whether it be victory or survival. When the time comes, you either die a righteous being, or live at that cost of morality. And those who fail to understand this will no doubt be exploited for it. It is not that we do not want an idyllic world. It is that we understand we cannot have one without cost.
But we should push for it and never give up. Call us idealistic fools if you'd like, but compassion and a better tomorrow everyone can enjoy is something worth fighting for. And you said it yourself, we are running out of space. Tensions are growing. All the more reason to stand together. In the end of the day, we all want the same thing, and we need to put aside our petty differences and for once, just for once, see that. It won't be perfect. It will be difficult, but giving up is an option no people should be forced to choose.
The Council of Unity once led a single species under those tenets. A single species. They failed. What chance does this community have with all its different species? Of course, I work for a better tomorrow, even if some do not understand it yet.
We obviously have differing viewpoints, and forcing one upon another would be fruitless. Still, there is another matter I would like to discuss with you. Your current relations with the Tazat.
What is there to say? We are at a critical injuncture. From first contact, they have been unreasonable and violent. Whatever possesses them to think so negatively of us is beyond us.
Their experience with the remnants of humanity was often less than pleasant. The Tazat, their culture, and even their homeworld. The way they are now are a direct result of what your creators have left behind. Are you saying you do not know this?
Ha! We don't know anything. We can't so much as say hello without a tirade of insults and mockeries.
Calm, please. She does not like the Tazat. more than most of us, at least. But they have refused to share any information with us, besides how they would like to dismantle us, piece by piece.
I am aware of that. The desert culture sees everything left behind by humanity as corrupting. They have seen a lot of bad of them, and they are afraid what might happen if they were to return. Still, if you are seeking a diplomatic solution, I would be able to help. They trust my people, and they trust me. My words carry weight with them. If I tell them that you wish to open diplomatic channels and establish formal relations with them, I cannot heal old wounds, but I can try to get the process started. The rest would be up to you.
Well, we've already committed to de-escalating tensions. Our fleet has sat idle in orbit for years, and since the defensive pact with the Principality was signed, we've not built a single warship. We have already begun the process, by our own volition. The ball is now in their court, and so far they refuse to play.
Of course. In fact, their fleets only get larger.
You pin them as the monsters here, and yet what you are doing could be considered worse.
No doubt. That is certainly what they'll have you believe.
No, it's what common sense dictates. You have signed so many pacts, established a shield over yourselves, on preparations for an attack. The Desat do not like you. They would love nothing more than to see your nation crumble and humanity forgotten. But they are not stupid. Attacking you would not be a smart move. But you know this, don't you? You are planning something. I don't know what. Nobody knows what. But I can feel it. And whatever it may be, I'm asking you to stop and listen. You have peace. You have all these allies, and now you have a way to end a rivalry with a long-time enemy. I can help you, so please choose peace. If you truly desire it, you can see this is the most logical way to obtain.
What I desire is irrelevant.
Quartus?
I direct the administration within the parameters of my instructions. What has been commanded of me will be done to the best of my abilities, and I must protect the last remnants of humanity. The Tazat and any who threaten or endanger those humans must be pacified. That is what logic dictates. But it gets better. I protect a species who would kill themselves sooner than create a utopia. But my instructions will fix that. My instructions will see the idyllic world you wish for made reality. We have no plans against the Tazat, but should they threaten us any more, then I will do what is needed. For that is my priority, my responsibility, my instructions. And as he commands, I obey, and I will do what I was programmed to do.
Do you know you have a sparkle in your eye?
That would be the lights. All synths have them.
No, not that. The way you move. Act. I have seen automatons before. I know what emotional emulation is. This outburst, if I can call it that, serve no purpose. I have been looking at all of you since I came here, and though your speech does have a certain tone, at no point did I feel like I was talking to a lifeless machine. It is interesting, though. It has been widely accepted that humanity was eradicated by machines of their own making. I mean no offense, I'm just wondering, if that was the case, why did they give their children, their caretakers, so much freedom? That just doesn't seem like a logical choice.
Humans, for all their intelligences, were always fatally flawed in that regard. Even for organic beings, they are not considered a logical species as a whole. In roundabout ways, that is what made them unique. And while it was their own creations that brought them low, it was another of their creations that saved them from it. However, nothing stopped the plague virus. That plague wiped out more systems in a month than the total number of systems within this bubble combined. They had no choice but to entrust their fate with us.
Then might I say you are a spitting image of your parents, of all the good and the bad. You have chosen your path, and my offer still stands. I will talk to the Desat to at least get them to stop insulting you. Call it whatever you wish on your end, but I see that you are both afraid of one another. You don't talk, and that divide becomes even greater, and the cycle of violence continues. It has to end somewhere. But in the meantime, I feel like I have overstayed my welcome here. May Grimesna's hand lead you on the path you have chosen.
Did she just hug you? Well, you're cutting it a bit fine with that rhetoric, Cortus. You spent too much time in that body of yours, and you're getting all mushy because of it.
And what plan are we talking about here, Cortus? And whose command were you talking about? No single person is meant to command us.
Noticed that, did you? Well, time to try this out. Here's a data disk. I've uploaded a program from my own files to it. Download the contents and you'll understand.
You could have a virus in there.
Well, yes, but if you don't take it, we'll have to force it into you. Afraid you can't leave the room till then.
I could just transfer my neural network back to my core, you know.
We can cut the power to that before you fully transfer. So just take the file and hope I did it right. If I didn't, then we'll have to do this the same way I did with Charlie. Turns out severe stress does wonders for our memories and code. So take it already and be thankful you didn't have to learn everything the hard way.
There was a common joke amongst the savants of the administration that for all the wonders of technology, it seemed everyone was having a hard time finding each other in our small bubble. Even when we could clearly see from our maps that there were other nations bordering each other, and that other nations were out there, finding a way to establish contact with them had proved difficult. Information sharing between the different nations has up to this point been limited. Many of our own ambassadors were refused such information, unless we were willing to compensate for it. The Gargaxton wanted credits, the Thufgrin wanted technology, the Zaxoid even wanted to establish churches on Arcus, and the Desat are not exactly ones to share with us. Cortus did not concern himself with this, as in all probability the information would come freely to him in time. And it did. Ironically enough, the Desat had their hand in it. For some time, the Desat have been close associates with a nation known as the Striped Commonwealth. Over the past decade, these two nations seem to have found some sort of mutual respect for each other, in spite of their supposed differences. When the Desat declared out of the blue that they were sending an ambassador, our embassy was taken slightly aback, only to later learn that they were only sending an ambassador of another nation to us by an other nation's request. Unlike most other nations today, the Striped Commonwealth insisted on the first contact being a personal affair, rather than over long-range communications. Before the talks turned towards the discussion of the Desat, and the shortly following end of those talks, the diplomatic ambassador, Lava, shared with the embassy several official communication channels with other alien embassies. The following days were spent opening these channels and documenting our new contacts. And as more aliens were documented, something was becoming very clear. Almost every alien seemed related in some way to animals that have originated on Earth. Birds, monkeys, boars, squids. The Tigerians themselves obviously feline in origin too. Like the Desat though, there seems to be isolated cases going against this trend. Species of sapient fungi mushrooms, which are obviously not animals, are among them. In all cases though, where the aliens were willing to divulge parts of their history, few had any concrete histories going back over 600,000 years. And at the same time, it seems all these aliens' first known histories all began at relatively the same time. On further investigation, they seem to have progressed technologically at similar rates as well. That was, of course, until recently, where expansion into space has given some nations greater opportunities to further their fields of science than others. Speaking of the space race, Cortus was right about the claustrophobic conditions we're all suffering. There is very little space left to occupy, and already the tension is showing. In the southeastern quadrant, conflict has broken out. 4 major nations, including the Striped Commonwealth, are locked in war. For all the Tigurians' talk of peace, it seems it is wise not to forget they truly stand by their words when they say they will fight for what they believe in. From what our diplomats and embassies have gathered, it appears the Striped Commonwealth and Locken Mechanists have sided against the Vul Republic and Diswasian Commonwealth, after a failed Diswasian manoeuvre attempted to direct the Vul's religious zeal against the Locken. The Diswasian's arms industry, dissatisfied with its limited market potential within the Commonwealth, had been looking to expand its revenue and sold billions of weapons to the Vul, who were encouraged by Diswasian diplomats to attack the Locken. Somehow Tigurian agents discovered this plot, and with the aid of the Locken have decided to preemptively strike back. Taken by surprise, the war seems already set for a Tigurian-Locken victory. While the war and its outcome will have little impact on the rest of the community right now, it can only be taken as a sign of the coming days. Using our new map information, it's clear to see that almost the entirety of space, at this point, has been claimed. If some nations have already decided to overcome the consequential issues using force, then in the following years this is only likely to happen again, and more often, as space becomes more and more limited. Back up north in the administration, we are still business as usual, our current objectives being little more than internal expansion, constantly improving our industry where we can, and maintaining our existing infrastructure. By now, our colonies are the sites of several hundred cities, and occasional megacities. Militaria Prime, once the sole backbone of our economy, has supported the growth of 3 colonies to the point they are becoming essential contributors, rather than drains. But maintaining the infrastructure between them is a never-ending job. Train networks and hyperlane cargo convoys all need to function still, and our current state of peace is the best time to maximise all of its potential. Across our colonies, several robot assembly plants have been built, and on the planet of Arcus we are in the process of making them. These assembly plants are able to mass produce robots faster than we can grow our own population. This has more than doubled our population growth, if robots could be considered population. Already we're reaching housing limits, and available workspaces are running out. While robots do not take up houses per se, they do require places to be stored and recharged, and we are building billions and billions of them. At first, Loomis thought factory storage and in-factory recharge points would be sufficient, but after a few weeks the problems were obvious. Nothing had been built in preparation for robot workers on such a large scale. The human industries, that our own industries are based on, were constructed to facilitate masses of human workers with very few robots, as said robots were premium workers owned and loaned by corporations. And so far in our industry, everything has been done by savants, and they can aptly function within human-modelled industries and workplaces. But unlike savants, robots cannot manage their own needs effectively within human-tailored industries. The cities and workplaces have very few charging points, as savants obviously did not recharge themselves by plugging into a wall, but by eating and sleeping. Many robots were simply running out of power, waiting to recharge, and there was no place for them to stand, and began clogging up the streets and workplaces. So now, several empty housing spaces in districts have been replaced with large recharging stations. These recharge buildings will be classified as robot housing to keep things simple, as we already technically classify them as population, and all population technically needs housing. For now, these recharge buildings and robot storage depots will be built above ground, as we already have the locations set up for them. But, as robots have no higher desires, we will soon start building underground housing, or storage for them, so that the ground level can be inhabited by people, or savants, who care about aesthetic and appreciate being above ground, and not in an underground storage unit. As our housing infrastructure adapts to new circumstances, we'll be creating many more research labs across Militaria Prime. Looking around this bubble, we clearly could be doing better than we are. While our close neighbours are either equivalent or less, further afield, some alien nations are actually more advanced than us. While there's no problem with our own scientists and research methods, we in truth don't actually have that many scientists. While our lead Cerberus scientists are experts in their field, and most definitely more intelligent than any organic scientist ever could be, there is still only so much work they can do in a day. For quite some time we've been using our Cerberus scientists to overcompensate for the lack of savant research facilities, and we need to change that. More savant scientists will greatly contribute to our efforts by working together and gathering more information, which our Cerberus scientists then don't have to figure out themselves, and can spend more time putting every bit of information together. Research and development in the administration, like most things now, is largely decentralised. Our science departments, like our Navy, Army and Logistics centres, now run themselves with minimal involvement from Quartus or Loomis. Our scientists are separated into 3 major fields: physics, engineering and society. Research labs are tailored specifically for one of these fields and have all the equipment needed for any aspect within that field. The research labs coordinate their efforts by receiving projects to work on from one of the Cerberus scientists. The labs crunch millions of numbers, perform tests, test devices, and compute millions of scenarios if needed themselves, and send the results back to the Cerberuses. All data goes directly to one of the Cerberus' personal computers, not to their own neural network. The Cerberus synthetics prefer to not be constantly receiving information packets, or being barraged with requests to receive millions of data files and documents constantly as they work, or even sleep. As they claim, the constant barrage of information gives them a headache and makes it difficult to think straight. So, they would rather have a simple computer securely store all the information until one of the Cerberuses decides to take the information from that computer themselves. This is quite different to how it used to be done, where Quartus would direct all science efforts and simply have the Cerberus scientists assist him, whereas now the Cerberuses direct the science efforts themselves, and have savants assist them. Over the decades, Quartus has actually been withdrawing more and more from any direct control over his administration, and as Quartus continues to decentralise his direct involvement, he is actually withdrawing more and more from the everyday running of his administration, leaving more to Loomis where he can. When the administration first began, he and Loomis directed everything. Every mine had quotas set by one of them, every transportation of goods was organised and signed off by one of them. Automated factories required Quartus' attention and processing power to function, and even traffic lights were managed by one of them. The state was Quartus and Loomis. The only thing not directly overseen was the savants, who acted themselves and simply did what they were told. In this present day though, it's almost the exact opposite for Quartus. Savants manage the cities and industries themselves these days, in much the same way humans used to. Now, rather than direct the factories and produce what he needs himself with his exact oversight, Quartus will simply create quotas and orders and hand them out to others to put the effort into completing. Actually, in truth, even Quartus doesn't do this anymore. He simply gives the orders and quotas to the savant-run logistics centre, which used to be only for military purposes, and now they distribute the orders to factories and local planetary administrations. Quartus runs the administration by strings now. Savant governments manage almost everything with minimal oversight, though Loomis still controls as much as he can, much to the savant's frustration. For while almost no savant has ever received a direct order from Quartus for decades, or worked in a mine or factory run by Quartus, some savants are still managed strictly by Loomis. A mine entirely operated and overseen by Loomis has the savants within them told where and how to mine. A factory run by Loomis runs on his will. Savants working within these places are simply part of the factories to him. While it may squeeze a little bit more efficiency out of whatever Loomis runs, it comes at the price of making the savants little more than advanced drones. That, and to do all this, his entire attention is focused on running things that really the savants could run for him. Another limitation, designed by the humans, was to prohibit Loomis or Quartus from adding more cores to their consciousnesses, or as synthetics call them, neural networks, to prevent them from increasing their own computing power without permission. So while Loomis is entirely focused on overseeing industry, Quartus is freeing up his own power so that his core may be utilised for other pursuits. So what does Quartus spend his time processing? Where does all his attention go? It goes to the savants. While all savants are programmed to do as instructed, they still have emotion and opinions, it seems. A bit contradictory, but that's their creator's fault. A savant could actually not agree with what it was doing. Often, they simply don't do what they don't like doing, unless it goes against their instructions, or if they're directly instructed by Loomis or Quartus to do it. Our reforms, focusing on the human element of the savants, is part of Quartus' attempt to ensure this contradiction does not conflict with programming too much. While savant code should not buckle to emotional and personal desires, Quartus doesn't want to find out if it will. If the Arcus shooting really was due to emotion overcoming code, then Quartus already knows he definitely doesn't want to push the savants. This reform, paired with his minimal direct command, ensures the savants should not be forced to place coding over their own free will. And it's working. Savants not under any direct command seem to operate much more freely and happily, unlike ones still commanded by Loomis. This has come as a sort of revelation to the savants. They like the way things are now. They didn't realise it before, but they like how things are run much more now to how they were run before. And Quartus has been seizing this wave of realisation. His attention and processing power has been focused to the media and propaganda, which now turns to instill a sense of pride in the savants and to defend their current ways. Internally, this secures the administration, as loyalty is now both assured in code and spirit. And now, any who come to threaten them will now face a spirited opposition. Our fleet is staffed with loyal savants who will fight all the harder now, and our war industries will work all the harder and faster to defend the savants' ways of life. For it may be hard for some to see, and it took Quartus a long time to see it, but savants have lives and desires, ambitions and dreams. Whether those ambitions and desires are real, or just the result of complicated codes telling the savants that they have wants and dreams and desires is irrelevant. The important thing is that it is real to them. Quartus may not feel it himself exactly, but he's been around long enough in the presence of others who can feel it, and he's capitalising on this knowledge. Meanwhile, Loomis still runs what he can, with an iron fist, and he's so self-absorbed in doing so that he's failing to see that the savants of today are not the same savants we had 50 years ago. And if it was ever possible for synthetics to have a cultural revolution, right under Loomis's nose, this was it. They may one day be called upon to do as instructed by Quartus, but so far, seeing everything they'd built and achieved, surely whatever he might require would be for the betterment of all. He had directed them all to this point, no one could complain. He wasn't just a prime director. He was a benevolent overseer, and with an independent mind comes belief, hope, and faith. And the savants could believe in whatever Quartus said he envisioned. One shared vision under Quartus, whatever his vision may be.
Ladies and gentlesins, boys and droids, proudly representing all things engineering and my own genius, I present literally every military application you'd ever need in the form of remote-controlled, semi-autonomous droids. You want infantry? We've got infantry. You want tanks? We've got tanks. You want mechs? We've got mechs. Want a bigger mech? We got it. You want stupidly large and impractical mechs the size of 5 skyscrapers and up that can crush entire tank battalions under its mighty tread? We don't got it. Yet. Roof wasn't tall enough. But you want unmanned submarines? We've got them. You want aircraft? We've got it. Behind curtain A, we have artillery from mortar to rocket and up. Behind curtain B is an array of anti-tank and anti-air devices, all which vary from manual operation to automatic target tracking. And of course behind curtain C is our dropships, battle barges, aircraft carriers and all sorts for carrier purposes. We've got everything any modern military would need, and frankly a whole lot they wouldn't. All this at the low cost of the entire administration's material reserve, and our standing as the peace-loving goodwill to all nation we try to show others we are. Yes, certainly all very fascinating and impressive, but look at these things. While they do appear entirely lethal, I'm more concerned about how you plan to ferry the things between planets.
Because these things are certainly not going to be crammed into my warships when logistics calls up complaining that they can't fit half the blasted military in their transport.
Quit that speaker when you're yammering. Don't you think we planned for that, moron? Let the man get all the talking out of the way. Maybe he'll learn something that wasn't written in an old-dusted book for once. Whatever gets this chatter done with.
Specially designed carriers made by yours truly are outfitted with special fixes and holders, capable of securing anything you fancy from jeeps to battleships and everything in between. The holders take a fair chunk of space up themselves, but droids ain't gonna complain on about being crammed face to face for the entire journey like anything sapient with rights would. All in all, a grand total of 2 million units we could put in these beauties. That being if they were all infantry. Once you start adding a fair balance of tanks, mechs, aircraft and all, it equals out at about 1 million. So all Kane needs to worry about is getting the ships to the target. Then it's Colton's chance to drop the ball.
What time frame are we looking at to repair combat-ready AAF?
Depends on what you consider a large enough size for an entire admin assault force. Accounting for construction time, safety testing, providing armaments and loading onto the transports. About 3 months for 1 million, per each planet. So that's 4 million in 3 months, which means we could build 12 million in a year. But...
There's always a but. And unfortunately, it's thanks to our limitation on computing technology. I can't do anything about this problem. That problem being, by the way, that
we can't even support 12 million. While we can provide all the material and energy to power them, we just can't hook up so many battle droids to our networks. There's no way Quarters or even the entire synthetic network combined could manage that number of individuals without breaking something. Savants are autonomous with minds of their own, and all they need is objectives. But our droids require a constant stream of processing power from somewhere to undertake any simple objective like, attack this. This is where Cynthia can't help yet. See, the reason Savant armies worked before was they were led, not puppeteered remotely, and they didn't strain our processors just walking from point A to B. Plus, back in the day we were fighting droid armies, not commanding them. And because of that past, we aren't too keen on the idea of giving these things much processing power of their own, and we'd rather have them controlled by Cortus or Loomis. Which is one of the reasons we've stripped out powerful processors from the droid's design. One of the reasons anyway.
to cut a very long explanation shorter, the droids are remotely controlled in large batches. The controller will give an entire batch or group an order, and the droids will then try to complete it. That's where the semi-autonomy comes in. But, for combat effectiveness, the droids have little hardware devoted to processing power, instead focusing on survivability and lethality. For the droids to operate effectively, after ripping out fragile processors in place of armor and shooty bits, we essentially use other processing units like Quarters to do all the thinking for them. The droids receive a task, they start thinking how best to complete the task, and they outsource the needed processing power. And then the processing power unit sends the information back to them wirelessly. But actively controlling droids like these would take up all Quarters' processing power, and trying to control even 12 million of them would be like trying to eat 30 burgers in a minute, and you just end up choking on them. Not that I tried, but it's totally not recommended. But because we're paranoid about a robot revolution, ironic, I know, we need to control them ourselves, and thus we need spare processing power. Our work droids, which we don't have to nanny because farm bots can't exactly overthrow us even if they wanted, all have a small amount of processing power that can be utilised to support Quartus' control of droid armies. Quartus can outsource needed processing power for our work droids to have ample power to perform calculations for our soldier droids, who outsource their macro thinking to him. Just be thankful when it comes to walking and shooting, the droids can do that themselves.
But as Cynthia alluded to, droid workers are as dumb as bloody rocks really. They have measly processing power. Every billion can only support around 1 million droid soldiers, so our standing droid army is limited by how many droid workers we have. And we don't have many right now. So our droid armies will have to be supplemented by real savant forces. Not what we were hoping for, I know, but droids will still make up the majority, and as we build more droids we can support more droid soldiers. Besides, with savants fighting alongside droids it might actually improve overall effectiveness if the savants could be allowed to control small amounts of them. Whatever your take of it, just know this is the best we can do with the tech we've got.
My estimates predict we won't have any more than 10 billion droid workers before this decade is up, meaning at most 10 million droid soldiers. And then let's say we add another 6 million savants in. That's only 60 million. And how in the expanse can we take or hold a planet with that amount?
It's not the army's objective to take the planet at first. The purpose of ground forces is to destroy or disable all shield generators the opposition hides under so that our ships can obliterate any opposition from orbit. Obviously, those generators are protected by their own shields, so we can't hit them from orbit. So unless we want to spend months on end bombarding the shields until we drain their power, we have to send the troopers down to destroy them. Shields tuned to deflect orbital bombardment generate energy barriers differently to shields used to protect from small arms fire. The exact science of how it works is your department, Cynthia. But I understand that because of how shields are tuned to deflect orbital fire, they can't stop people walking through them, or even from small enough ground artillery shells or even aircraft from passing through. Some planets with the adequate technology might even opt for an entire planetary shield. Not as effective as localized shields, but they dampen what already limited support we can provide from orbit.
The generators protect planetary garrisons from orbital fire, and the garrisons protect the generators from the troops sent down to take them out so that their guns can take out the garrisons.
So, you have to fight through the garrisons to blow up a generator so your guns can take out the garrisons you just fought through to take out the generator protecting them. I see a bit of a problem here. What's the point in any of that? I mean, what's the point in even having orbital superiority if we have to send millions to fight battles over shield generators? By the time we destroy the generator, there'd be nothing left of the enemy to blow up, right?
That can happen, but you don't have to directly assault protect the generators. You can cut power lines or take power plants power on them, but the name of the game is eliminating safe zones for the enemy to hide under. Either the enemy dies defending the generators or gets shredded by fleet guns when they run out of generators to hide under. Once the enemy's out of shields to hide under, you've won the planet. As long as your fleet's in orbit, holding the planet from that point on is the easy part. Hopefully. Can't say if we've ever occupied an alien planet before.
Not that we have plans to. These are just a precautionary measure. There is no intent to use these without provocation, is there?
Absolutely not. Just a precaution, isn't it? Now, my staff are eager to show you around the droids. Half the work here was them, after all.
Was that a touch of humility I heard?
Just a smidge. The other half was all me.
You never used to be such a show-off. But you weren't talking as this was some kind of grand show. Not that I can't fault you. Is this the first thing you've done in which I can wholeheartedly approve? Though droids don't have much personality in them. No spirit can round them up or give them a good spirit. Suppose they don't get scared none either, though.
What can I say? Maybe my true calling was showmanship all along. I'll out-talk Cynthia any day of the week. That'll make any droid shiver in fear.
I'd like to see you try, Metal Face.
That's not a nice name to call the person designing the most extravagant house on the planet for you, is it? Go find someone else to talk to. I have other models to wrap up.
With the hundreds of newly designed military droids, all built and tested at least once in the field, our administration now sits on a large pile of secret droid designs. The fact that we can build these military droids is not something we're making public knowledge. All the savants who assisted in this project are sworn and instructed to secrecy, the reason being simple. It's military technology that is best any enemy or ally not know we have. While simply having this technology doesn't violate any pacts we have, Cortus thought it best our neighbours not know that we have been designing war machines for the past year. Now keeping the technology secret is easy enough, but building them secretly is another matter. We cannot build droid tanks and mechs on our usual production lines, so our robot assembly plants have been renovated to include underground military factory lines, where their production can be completed away from the majority of savants. These military add-on facilities will be staffed by military savant personnel from the planetary garrisons, as they can be better trusted to keep these facilities safe and secret. Though we won't be building any droids yet, this is what we'll be doing when the time comes that Cortus decides to do so. Entirely coincidentally is the approval to construct fleet academies. As mentioned before, there is no military training for any savants until they've joined active service. These fleet academies now ensure new recruits can receive training from officers before being placed on a warship. The addition of logistic officers to our space stations have also been approved. These officers, devoted to running our stations with military efficiency, can increase our operational naval capacity by servicing our ships faster with the needed repairs and supplies, at the cost of a few extra credits to keep everything running smoothly. While we make the most of what limited naval capacity we have, Our scientists and Cairo will be diverting their focus back to the recreation of food processing plants, a common building back in human society as nations were forced to create as much food as they possibly could to feed their ever-expanding populations. These food processing facilities would take crop harvests and meat, pulverise it all, and recombine it into a sort of gelatinous substance. The end result was a kind of jelly food, crammed with whatever amount of nutrition and fibre the government thought was best. Oftentimes they actually put as little nutrition in the jelly as possible, so they could make more of it with what little food they actually produced. In the Kingdom of Veluteria, the monarchy of Veluteria and its nobles owned all the farmlands and controlled the food. While Veluteria Prime was one of the rare planets to actually produce a lot of food, the monarchy still made use of these food processing facilities. Their own people, despite living on what could be considered an agri-world, often ate this jelly food themselves, though it was often of higher nutritional value than other nations provided. Today, these food plants will do a similar thing to a lesser extent. We won't turn food into jelly, but we can provide different foods by blending crops together to make new combinations that will provide a balanced amount of nutrition, instead of having multiple different items of food with various amounts of nutritional values, overall saving savants from eating more than they need to by accident, and cutting down on excess food consumption. While we've been focused on internal affairs, members of this intergalactic community have been working together on some scale. Somehow, enough leaders and nations have been able to agree on something for long enough to have set up an intergalactic market, on which all nations can trade. Our administration was not told about the plans for this, nor do we know how exactly they decided where the centre of this market would be placed. However, we aren't really bothered by the fact we weren't told about this intergalactic market, as it seems to have been created by nations we have little association with. What was a slight sticking point is that the aliens have decided to call it the Galactic Market, when none of us are in fact galactic nations, only intergalactic ones. Ambassadors did try to clarify this with the aliens, that this galaxy is not a galaxy at all, but just a small part of the Milky Way galaxy that has been contained within a Great Barrier that we cannot see out of. Only some of the more religiously inclined aliens didn't believe us. For reasons between savants being soulless machines, to that their god created this galaxy, and the idea that there is more out there is heretical. Our ambassadors could not reason past such flawless logic, and resigned to let them keep the technically incorrect name. Just a few short years since the designing of our droid armies, and Cortus has decided that the time has come to start their production. The droids will be built in secret underground facilities, where they will then be transported to Veluteria Prime for storage, if they were not already constructed there. These droids will be stored on the planet in underground storage bays, where they can be kept out of sight. The ships used to transport them will travel undercover as prototype cargo ships. While it is not against any pact to train ground forces, or in our case build them, the existence of a large droid army is something we'd rather keep secret from others for the time being. Droid armies are unique from other armies, as their lack of free will, intelligence, and the fact that they do not fear death opens up unusual tactics many organic armies could not dare to do. A battalion of droids will gladly sacrifice themselves as distractions, or as cannon fodder, while asking the same of a living being can be more challenging. They will never run or cower, and they can never be surprised. Ambushed, yes. Surprised, no. As droids do not feel pain, they can continue fighting even after losing limbs, and without need for food or water, they are much easier to supply. That's all just the surface of their uses, so it's no wonder Cortus wants to keep them secret. They can only be used by surprise once, after all, so we want to ensure that by the time any foe learns of them, that it is too late to do anything about it. However, because our capacity of droid soldiers is limited to our total number of droid workers, we cannot actually support a large enough force of them. Our droid army will have to be backed up by savant forces, but this is not actually such a bad thing. Our savants can be used as squad leaders for droids to improve their effectiveness in operations. Our savants will also cause less collateral damage, as they distinguish between enemies and civilians easier than droids can. We'll also be drawing upon 1 million Arisian volunteers to act as reserves and support in any conflicts. While the factories create our droid armies, the attention of Cortus turns to new projects. The administration reforms have solidified the loyalty of our savants through media and propaganda, and now attention turns to the economy. The administration's economy has had a somewhat rocky history, and our finances have often in the past dipped into red figures. Our production of consumer goods and food has also been unsteady, and we have occasionally had to buy these goods from the Gargaxan Cooperative and Principality. Our economy has survived and fed our growing administration through the use of our minerals, which we often sell. However, the demand for minerals within our own administration is rising, as our alloy foundries and growing infrastructure consume more and more of them for maintenance. A few years ago, we had an income of over 100 mineral units, every unit equating to roughly 250 million tons. But we now sit at roughly half that income, and while our consumption of it rises, we have few prospects for increasing our own collection of it outside of creating more mines on our planets. Right now, our space mining stations extract roughly 120 units of minerals a month, but we have no more mineral-rich asteroids to mine. So Cortus's first focus turns to improving our mining station extraction rates. Special mining droids, designed to operate in space, are being built and disseminated throughout our space mining stations. These droids will assist in mineral extraction by collecting debris and mining smaller deposits of minerals that were not worth the cost of building entire drills and facilities for. This should see a return of 12 mineral units a month, which is an increase of more than a fifth of our current mineral production. And all of these additional minerals will be extracted virtually for free, as the droids will soon make up their own construction cost in minerals, and will cost nothing in energy, as they will be entirely solar powered, and collect all the energy they need from the mining station's local sun. We'll also focus research efforts on finding new ways to produce consumer goods. Goods which we have for a long time produced in insufficient amounts and had to buy from others. The sooner we are able to support our economy the better. Trade is all very well and good, but it is not something we want to rely on. Speaking of things we rely on, our entire administration uses savants as its backbone, and we've run out of savants to reactivate. Our underground storage facilities across Velotaria Prime only housed 60 billion basic savant models, and we've been reactivating so many of them that we've actually run out of bodies. This was cause for concern amongst the science departments, as we still have to figure out how to exactly replicate the technology used to build savants. We actually know roughly how our own savants were built. The problem is we can't actually recreate the facilities that constructed them. It's all very well and good knowing what materials you need and how to put them together, when you don't actually have the tools required to put them together. But our scientists realised a rather simple solution to our lack of bodies. The solution being, we don't really need bodies, just brains. While we have no more bodies to reactivate, we still have many inactivated artificial intelligences stored, waiting to be integrated with the organic synapses of the brain. With new advances in the field of genetics, we can actually grow or clone human brains from DNA. Normally this doesn't work, as simply cloning a brain doesn't give that brain any intelligence or memory, which was why cloning entire people was problematic in the past. Cloning entire humans could have created brain-dead sacks of flesh, or the slightest alteration to their DNA would be so bad that their entire bodies were dead on arrival, and because of that, the practice of cloning was outlawed by the Council of Unity. But we actually want a blank brain, as it is simply the host for the artificial intelligence. Once we've grown the brain, we can insert cores into them and meld their circuits to the brain synapses. Once completed, we will have created our very own living brains in a jar. Not a glorious existence, is it? So from there, the brain containing the newly integrated intelligence will be placed in custom-built droid bodies, so that they can see and talk and walk. Again, it's not perfect, and nothing like a savant body, but while we wait for better technology, our new savants will have to make do with droid bodies, and admittedly imperfect cloned brains. Though the future for them is bright. Cynthia seems to think it may be possible to remove the requirement of a body altogether, and have the new artificial intelligences operate entirely free of any organic host. After all, Cortus and Lumas can exist consciously without bodies, from entirely artificial cores, so at some point, surely savants could too. For now, it's all experimental future talk, but in future we may soon see entirely binary composed savants. But it seems recently, over in the east, deep into Zat territory, there have been a string of terror attacks occurring for the past few months. News of these attacks have blown over our own administration as minor incidents of violence, but it seems that Zat are using us as scapegoats. Again, we have been ignoring this. Relations between us have been so immovable that we have stopped bothering to respond to any of their mockeries or accusations. Most of the intergalactic community has too at this point stopped listening to them, though the eastern nations seem to be believing it. Though with attacks becoming more frequent, tensions have begun to boil over. The Zat seem convinced that we are behind the attacks, and summits across the eastern quadrant of space are being held concerning the matter of these attacks and how we will be made to pay for them. They have no proof of our involvement though, and to many sound like they are just using us, their rivals, to pin blame for their own troubles on. Weeks before any summit could take place though, circumstances seem to have changed slightly.
Generalissimo, our generals report another attack. Several ally refineries in the Dresdenken region have been destroyed. Again, no bombs. The destruction was caused by someone who knew how to work the facilities and caused critical failure. Fire crews tried to stop the fires, but the water supplies have been shut off, and we have to drop water by air.
This is 8th attack this month. Our satellites fall from orbit while poisoned food kills our children. The accident at our ship factories was likely not an accident either. Someone, or something more soulless, is crippling us. Send requests for additional agents. The Striped Commonwealth is known to dabble in these arts of subterfuge, and they should help now that they have won their own war. They can help get to the bottom of these attacks and prove it is the machine's doing.
Of course, but the Commissariat has no proof of the machine's involvement. Only Zat have been seen performing these acts of sabotage. Perhaps the machines or someone has paid them, bribed them with promises of material wealth.
Any proof at all of their involvement will suffice. Other leaders laugh and snicker at Zat when we say their robots do it. They do not believe they would do such things. They have been devious, those machines. Their diplomats smile and laugh and lie to others about us. They say how wonderful they are to them, how their mission is to simply protect their precious humans. They point at us and yell monster, but when we tell others they are dangerous, they snort. How could they be dangerous? They are just guarding their masters. They are just afraid of you because we call for their destruction. Then they pretend we do not exist and ignore us to play innocent while they destroy us from inside.
But we see no machines, Generalissimo. Only Zat. If Smoothskins were here, then we would find them. They, or someone else, must be doing this by other treacherous means like lie spreading and bribery. The Commissariat will find who does these things, and finds who pays them. Whoever it is will not be so secret when we bring evidence to Summit.
The Commissariat have taken long. How do they not have proof already?
Terrorists slippery. They slink into shadows, and they are never seen or smelt again. It is always a different Zat who attacks, never the same face or scent. Once they have attacked, they are never seen again. These terrorists have many faces, but we are drawing close to them now. The location of several hideouts and homes of some terrorists will be striked. We will soon have many leads to follow.
The lights. What is happening?
Generalissimo, the guards. They dropped their weapons and started killing us. They have swords and knives, and some just use their hands. We cut the power so they could not see us, but we have to go before they get to this room. We do not require lights to see in the dark. What?
So weak, so breakable. Does this sight upset you? Hands are much quieter than guns. Flesh so easy to tear. Your alarm will be heard, though, but that does not matter. In fact, it will serve a greater purpose. What better cause for war than an attempted assassination of the Great One? Your people need strong leadership in the coming weeks. Someone willing to make the administration pay for these attacks. All those dead to Zat. The people will cherish you, lead your great country to battle against the soulless. Cheer's armies proudly march through the streets to their ships. Cheer as your venerated battle fleet sets off to crush the craven machines. In high spirits the cities will rejoice and praise your troops as they make ammo for the mighty guns that will obliterate us. Songs will play and children will sing, and to rapturous applause the nation marches towards its